The insidious dream killer. How comfort can quietly kill your biggest dreams. Maybe you've got a good job and you're comfortable, earning money, yet something feels off. It's the comfort trap. You're paid well and have everything you should want. You sit in comfort and some days it feels good, just like our friend up here. Yet you feel empty and frustrated. Why is that? It's often because you have ideas you want to explore, yet you haven't done anything with them. You say you want to work at it at weekends and in the evening, yet you're not doing it. You know you could do more, but that's always put off until tomorrow. It's a trap, and it's designed to keep you here. Meanwhile, you also notice others around you are getting sharper, faster, and more capable. They're trying new things, they're being bold and courageous, and they're leveling up, starting new projects, learning new skills and taking on more responsibilities. You're starting to notice those behind you are quickly catching up with you and will fly past you at some point. Inevitable. Your existing peers are leaving you behind. Strangely, you can't find it in you to actually care. You start to resent others, and then you start to resent yourself. Now, this is somewhere I've been. This is a story I'm telling you of mine. I knew something was off, and I knew I could stay on this route, but it just didn't feel right. And I couldn't, it was really difficult to explain. I felt throttled, and like a feeling of slowly suffocating. And there are people around me who are perfectly fine, by the way, but this is just my experience. I was really desperate to break free in some way. A lot of people at the time didn't really understand this feeling, and it's because I had this creative energy in me that desperately wanted to get out. But I was also relatively comfortable, so it was a bit of a paradox. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can get into this state and what a bit deeper into the comfort trap and how they get you there, right? How they trap you. Then we're going to talk about comfort versus ambition. There's often a bit of torment here, and I see this amongst clients I work with. I can stay in a comfortable position, but I really want to push for more. Then we're going to talk about mental obesity and how this is causing some serious problems these days, especially with all of the technology that's coming out. And I'm just going to touch on the way out of all of this. Okay, let's get started. The comfort trap. I want you to imagine this is you. You go along about your life, and right in front of you is comfort, because that's where you are right now. You could just keep cruising on and you've got things pretty good. You've got alternatives, but it requires more effort to explore your creative ideas or other opportunities. So what happens? You end up choosing comfort. These would be nice, but when it comes down to it, you choose this route. It's straightforward, it's easy. You get here, but then you start to experience the consequences of those choices, and you realize that there is a lacking of exploration, and you start to feel regret and the feeling of missed opportunities. This is something that I had a lot of problems with kind of 10 years ago, way over 10 years ago, when I created my YouTube channel in 2006. I just put it to one side. I really wanted to work on it. I thought about this pretty much every week since then. And the first time I posted content was in 2019. Now, I did post some content on cycling and dancing, but what I'm talking about is face-to-camera stuff. I'd always wanted to do it, but I just got really comfortable in my own work mode. I just ignored it. I feel really sad about not making those moves earlier. How does this all happen? The golden cage. It's a seduction. These comfortable jobs, they lure you. It's a version of a trap for a specific type of person, right? I'm going to keep adding this caveat here because other people like this place, and that's perfectly fine. I'm talking about if you're resonating with this video already. Why? Because it provides financial stability, regular paychecks, and often pretty good ones, especially when I've been working with clients in the last couple of years. They've always been stuck in this trap where things are in a fairly good place. They have benefits and security here. There's a really tricky situation because it makes it really difficult to leave. It locks you into a routine. You have a lifestyle, and usually a more expensive lifestyle. Things are just good enough to pull you away from from your own interests. The work is doable. You're familiar with all of it. You know how everything works. And then the lure of promotions and working your way up the ladder keeps you constantly distracted. enough so that you won't spend your free time working on your own thing. And then the urgent deadlines that when they do call on you, keep you focused on your work and not on things that you would like to prioritize. It's always the first thing that goes: your creativity, curiosity, and true ambitions. I mean, this is just a pattern I've seen from lots of people. And this is just not in any particular one country either. This is kind of multiple countries. It's super interesting how this is spread everywhere. And the longer you stay here, the more you'll likely resent seeing others take the leaps you didn't have the courage to take. But this is really a reflection of yourself, right? It's not usually against those people. However, you can end up feeling that resentment. This comfort will quietly kill your zest for life. This is something that was slowly happening to me, for sure, and something that I hear reported so frequently through lots of client work. So I'm just going to talk about some of these observations. There are a certain category of clients who have a good job, good title, yet are feeling trapped. They recognize they've got decades left. They want to work on their own projects, and this is not about escaping that life completely, right? This is about the first step of actually starting to work on these other projects that could spark off new paths or directions. They're not even getting this first step down. They want to work on these projects but are not getting around to it. Why? The work demands, depleting energy. And this is a serious one because the requirements from work do use up your mental capacity and can make you tired. And then there's the emotional side, because you're in this job, it's familiar, but it can still drain you. And they've provided this really comfortable cage, yet you don't feel really infused by the work. It can be an emotional torment, and it tortures you. Clients have felt really tied to their work because of this compensation. So this is where this trap works quite effectively. You feel really grateful for it. You feel good because it's keeping all of your bills being paid, the food on your table. And then when they demand you to do extra work, you do. And so then you prioritize that over everything else. After hours, you often end up too tired. Your weekends, you need them to recover, only to start it all over again on Monday. This comfort slowly erodes your drive to push your own personal boundaries, because everything in your life is good enough. Yeah, again, this is something that seems to be quite a strong pattern. It's very hard to break good enough. It's a very clever position to be in, because if you make someone really angry, like if an employer makes you really angry, you will do more extreme things like quit and do something drastic, and you're willing to cut your nose to spite your face. But if everything is good and they provide you with a very comfortable cage and a very good place to nest, it's very difficult to do any extreme actions. That's why it's so clever. Yeah, there's a more insidious effect. There's a risk of dreaming bigger. It requires extra energy. You have to be proactive. You have to put in more energy than is required. And if the more comfort you're given, the more benefits you're given, what this is doing at an unconscious level is it's aligning with your mind's natural state to be really energy efficient, to try and save energy. Your brain is telling you to stay in this position because it's keeping you alive. So that's where you're going to find even more friction from wanting to do your own thing, because you're stretching away from your brain's survival instinct, expending more energy than is necessary. The more comfort you're given, the more reinforcement your brain is given that this is genuinely a safe place. Right, next, comfort versus ambition. The reason I just want to touch on this is this is a discussion that's often brought up, that a lot of people feel this torsion of, you know what, maybe I could live this life just in this comfort mode. Some days I don't like it, but it's so good. Versus this side of them, which is, but I know I'm really ambitious. I know I can try and do, I want to find out what I'm capable of doing. But then you go back to this energy conservation mode, this comfortable mode, and then you're fighting with these two situations, which consumes, the irony is that indecision consumes an insane amount of energy. So just to be really clear about this, when you're comfortable, what does that represent? It represents safety, but it also represents being stagnant and often feeling stuck. And it's like your muscles are wasting away. It can be like, being taken around on a bike or in a car or in a wheelchair everywhere, and your muscles just start wasting away when you're not using your own legs or arms, versus being ambitious and being more purposeful. It can often make you feel more alive because you can feel the strain on your brain in a sense, and it can obviously and it can make you feel more empowered, right, and powerful. And I see this when people start stretching themselves and they start saying, wow, I'm actually kind of proud of myself for being able to produce that or to create that. So you have to decide which way you want to play it. Now we'll talk about the bottom line in a moment. But I just want to touch on the stability illusion. This is quite important because this might flip you from one side to the other. You have to think about how real this stability is. Now, you've seen in the news recently, and this is globally, companies change and industries evolve, and everything's all up in the air right now, seemingly globally and societally. Redundancies. Now, if you're in the tech sector, you've probably seen a lot of this. Lots of layoffs. There's been lots of sectors that have had lots of layoffs in the last year or so. The impact of AI. Now, I know I've contracted people for work which I'm now getting AI to use. I never thought that would be the case. AI is doing just a good enough job for certain tasks. Societal changes and trends shift demand and supply. So the need for certain roles is changing, and we can't control a lot of this. It's really hard to predict. So ultimately, it's how do you want to play life, right? And the stability you have, what is that based on? Where have you built that narrative, and how trusting are you of that narrative? You have to make your own minds up here. But the one thing I always like to think about is if you are resilient and you're adaptable, you're more likely to survive these shifts. Now, mental obesity. This is a term I've used quite a lot over the last few years. The damage of a lot of discomfort happens over a long period of time, and you often don't notice. It's not noticeable overnight. Some things that you start to notice is you lose your sharpness. This is something I actually felt really, really shameful of, because that spark I had when I was a lot younger, the sharpness, the ability to work really hard and focus really hard, I noticed I started to lose that when I became numb to the work. A lot of that ambition, I just felt like a sword that had turned into a butter knife or into a spoon eventually. You just become less resourceful. Now, this is something I have noticed. It totally happened to me, and it's something I regularly see with clients. And it's something that we always have to start retraining. It's usually retraining. People have usually been able to tap a version of themselves from the past when they were younger, when they have needed to be resourceful. And so we're just reminding them. But it's really difficult, because just as when you get obese and you put on a lot of weight and fat, it's very difficult. You can't just suddenly run immediately. You have to start working at it, and your body might not be able to cope in the beginning. So you have to slowly work your way in. I feel like the same thing happens to your mental capacity and your emotional capacity. Over time, you also become more fearful. I noticed this too. When you take less risks and you sit in your comfortable cage, when you see threat, you're a lot more sensitive to it. So you're a lot more sensitive to risk. It makes it a lot harder for you to change and adapt. So these are like the mechanisms of how it becomes really difficult and how you end up becoming what I call mentally obese. It's quite a strong term, but I think it's really important to think about that. You also notice that time starts to pass quicker. This is a phenomenon that you may have heard of, and it's something I totally experienced. In the early years, when you're learning everything, and it's kind of cool because you're learning all these new skills in the workplace. And then after quite a few years, when you start to settle in and you start doing the same thing over and over again, everything becomes familiar and things repeat. You get into your real comfort zone. And what happens is you're not given any mental stimulation, so no novel situations to stimulate you. So the days just blend into one. Years start to fly by. And that was a really big signal to me that something was wrong, because I really enjoyed when I could feel this constant, when I could feel learning, new stimulation, new things happening. And this wasn't happening, right? Months and years were flying by. I'd have long-term catch-ups with friends, and they'd be like, what's happened? Or what have you been up to? And I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I been up to? I was working on this project and then another project, and it was the same project. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. The way out. Okay, this is really important, and I'll probably save this for another video for the future, but you need a really compelling reason. This is the proverbial rock bottom moment for a lot of people. You have to decide what you're fighting for, because if you don't have something, a compelling reason, unfortunately, I'm going to say that the comfort will probably win. Now, this is one of the reasons. This is my long form content. If you've seen my short form content on TikTok and Instagram, there's a reason why I talk really firmly in that. It's to act as a catalyst to pull out these compelling reasons, because sometimes they're just buried. You're so comfortable, you've just numbed out to all the seriousness of all the consequences to your life. Like someone not realizing how bad their weight gain is and what the consequences to their long-term health are going to be. Someone needs to get them on the scales and show them, and then put them on a chart so that they can see. If you want to change your long-term trajectory, this is kind of the same thing. And I'll just add in here, I've noticed sometimes when I take an initial call for a potential client, I'll ask them this because I need to figure this out. If they're not in that really painful zone, I often find it's too much of a challenge to make the changes. The reason I'll come to on the next slide. You have to feel this deep amount of pain and have a very, very strong reason to make this change. You have got to be in a position where you can no longer tolerate this situation. You need to do what is necessary. So this is why it's difficult, because what is necessary is often very hard. You have to find the time and energy to do the work. You can always find a way. Always. There is always a way through here. If you find yourself making excuses, it probably doesn't matter enough to you. So sometimes I'll have to tell people, go away, and I think you should probably work on that, try it, and come back to me if you feel this change. Now, I'll give you an example of how this would happen. Someone would be in a situation where they've got a pending promotion over the next 6 months or so, and they want to work on their own projects and their own thing, but they've got the promotion in their head as well. There's a desire for both sides, and they're not feeling the pain enough. And I've worked with someone in the past where we've gone down that route, and they kept getting drawn by the promotion work. I said, I think we need to take a break, and you can work on the promotion stuff. Come back to me if anything changes. I think it was about 4 months later, they ended up getting in touch and saying they were really angry because it was really they felt it was really unfair that the promotion, how they were treated, and they weren't given a promotion. They were like, this is a straw that broke the camel's back. I want to figure out a way out of this. And then we picked up it up after that. Often people need to get to that level of pain. This happens to me in terms of doing what is necessary. I wanted to create a food business, and I was trying to do this while I was working full time. And I was working late. I was working after hours to get my work done. And I remember having to take deliveries of equipment during my lunch breaks. But the problem was I was at the office. And this was big equipment. So you can see I was driving my car up here, taking these massive boxes. So I'd end up having to spend time making friends with the security guard so that they would do me favors and take the equipment in. There are some pretty serious steps that need to be taken. Now, I remember working through this, and it was a real testament to seeing how committed I was to doing what was necessary. It ended up being way more than I expected. And I remember having to wake up really early, kind of 5 a.m. in the morning before my main work. And I was doing this in stealth mode, so no one knew about it, because I needed to make sure the income was coming in at the time. And we ended up having a really good season working with that. And there's some pictures there. Decide what is your comfort costing you. It's time to reclaim your dreams, right? And to work on them, to find out what you are capable of. When I started doing this, it was one of the most freeing feelings that I've ever had. And it allowed me to really push myself and find out what I was capable of. So find your compelling reason, commit to small actions, and that can be even carving out 15 minutes in the morning or in your lunch breaks. Build on your creative energy. This is what I often see with people. If it's a project you want to create, like an app you want to build, a book you want to write, videos you want to create. Find a way to give yourself the time to make them. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.